Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today we're going to take a look at the short but very sweet studio output of a very cool band from the 70s, part of the Canterbury scene, the legendary National Health. Of course, National Health kind of formed out of the ashes of Hatfield in the North, Gilgamesh, that whole scene right there. Initially founded in 1975. Dave Stewart, member of Hatfield in the North. Alan Gowan, never know how he says his name, from Gilgamesh. All right, put this band together, included guitarist Phil Miller, bassist Mont Campbell, Phil Lee, part of the original band. Bill Bruford, also in the original lineup, but then was replaced by Pip Pyle. All right, Mont Campbell replaced by Neil Murray, and then eventually John Greaves. All right, you had all sorts of people coming and going from the band, at various points during their career. Steve Hillage briefly was in the band, John Mitchell, Georgie Bourne, Lindsay Cooper, all sorts of folks have come and gone from the National Health Band. But, for the most part, the stalwarts throughout their career, Phil Miller on guitar, Dave Stewart for the most part, always there. And then, like I said, Pip Pyle. That's kind of like the classic lineup of the band. Stewart, Pip Pyle, Phil Miller, and John Greaves, right? But all of these folks that I mentioned contribute at some point or another during their pretty short career when you think about it, right? These guys weren't around for too long. They released their debut album and second album in the same year, and then you didn't really see anything from them till the early '80s. So. But pretty cool albums nonetheless. So I'm going to rank them. I got the three albums in question. All right, so we've got. We'll get started in a second, and then I'm going to talk about a couple little cool archival release things. So the first album, coming in at number 3 for me, and I do want to say all three of these albums are absolutely terrific. There's no weak cuts, there's no weak albums, no weak tracks. This is pretty special music. Not for everybody, though. I would say National Health and a lot of the bands from that Canterbury scene, very quirky, British-sounding music. A lot of jazz influence, a little bit of pop influence as well, some avant-garde, certainly some fusion. If you love jazz rock fusion, National Health, probably out of all of the so-called Canterbury bands, probably fit into that mold pretty squarely. Right? There's moments of free jazz on here. It's definitely, if you love adventurous, complicated instrumental music, mostly. There are some vocals here and there on some tracks, but mostly instrumental music. The first selection here, coming in at number 3, is going to be D.S. Al-Coda from 1982, which I don't have as a separate CD, but it's included on National Health Complete, which has their 3 complete albums as well as some early recordings, all in one collection. D.S. Al-Coda, 1982. Basically, a reformation of the band and a tribute to the late keyboard player Alan Gowan, who had passed away. All right, he was an essential part of the early part of this lineup. Co-wrote or wrote a lot of tunes. He had a lot of tracks a lot of songs that he had written that the band decided, we're going to, as a tribute to Alan, we're going to put out another National Health album, and it's all going to be Alan's compositions. So, every song written by him. This album is definitely more kind of fusion sounding, I think. And the album has an early 80s flair to it, released in 1982. It sounds a little different than the early material, but it's still really, really, really enjoyable music. Portrait of a Shrinking Man kicks it off. Highly engaging song. Killer sax solo from guest Elton Dean. Of course, Elton Dean, another big part of the Canterbury scene for many, many years, also a member of Soft Machine. We got TNTFX. Has some absolutely terrific soloing from Phil Miller on guitar. What a great guitar player. You got the breezy Black Hat. Kind of has that Canterbury feel. Kind of sounds like Hatfield in the North. Hatfield in the North had this kind of breezy, quirky, kind of cute sound. It's kind of jazzy, right? Kind of poppy. It's considered prog rock, but definitely different. The Canterbury scene was really different than a lot of the other music going around. You'll never kind of mistake any of these bands for like Yes or Genesis, right? Or Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Totally, totally different. What else we got? I mean, that song is just a lot of fun. You got a lot of really cool bass grooves from John Greaves, Pit Pile, great drummer, and then you got some great synths from from Dave Stewart, and great rhythms from the other two guys on the kind of proggy, Canterbury, fusiony I Feel a Night Coming On, which is another really, really standout track from this album. You got the long Shining Water, lovely track. Plenty of great keyboards and synth textures, plus a really nice kind of like exploratory guitar solo from Phil Miller. And then Flanagan's People is kind of real frantic, upbeat, probably the fastest paced song on the album. And then you got the majestic Toad of Toad Hall, which kind of finishes things off. All in all, I think it's a wonderful album. DS Alcoda, if you can get a hold of it. Let me see if I can get you. I don't even know if they have a picture of the cover here in this collection. I don't think they do. No, they don't show any of the cover art in here, unfortunately. But anyway, if you can get it, really good. I tell you what, if you have no National Health albums and you can get this, the complete National Health Complete, this has basically everything on it. So I have some of the other ones as well, but this is the first thing I ever got, because I think at the time National Health CDs were very hard to get. They've re-released them over the years, but I bought this back I think in the 90s or the very early 2000s. So definitely very cool. Coming at number 2, I'm going to go, again, this is hard to rank the two initial albums because they're both so good, but I'm going to go with the debut, released earlier in 1978, just called National Health. All right, not a lot of tracks on here, but man, killer debut. You got the opening epic. I have the opening. Tenemos Roads has some absolutely wild Dave Stewart organ solos. It's kind of like a mix of prog and fusion and avant-garde elements. Terrific song. I think it's like 10 or 12 minutes long, something like that, or maybe a little bit longer. You got Brujo. Is kind of a quirky melodic piece. Got some amazing Neil Murray. Yes, that Neil Murray, formed later on of Black Sabbath and Whitesnake and all sorts of other bands, with some great fretless bass lines on that. You got Amanda Parsons, who appears in a couple spots on this album, with her little vocalizations. It's not like real, singing lyrics. It's more like these kind of like la la la, doing like these little floaty things. Floaty things, whatever you want to call them. So she's on a couple tracks on this album. Plenty of jazz leanings on this track. All right, you got the 2-part Borogovs, which kind of picks up the pace a little bit with some funky grooves, lots of fusion influence, an absolutely ripping Phil Miller guitar solo. Actually, he's got a couple of them on this track. Nice tricky drums from Pit Pile, and then finishing off the album, you got the epic Elephants closes out the show with, again, more adventurous fusion passages, lots of solos. There's a great organ solo from Dave Stewart, and he's got some kind of tasty electric piano, like Fender Rhodes things going on throughout the song. Absolute stunner of an album. That's my number 2. Coming in at number 1, I'm going to go at 1978, their second album of Q's and Cures. Here's the guy sitting down, having a couple pints, right, reading the newspaper, smoking a couple cigarettes, right? Their classic second album. You got Dave Stewart's The Bryden 2-Step for Amphibians, 2-part epic, which kind of bookends the album, opens and closes. Terrific. Loads of great rhythms and soloing from the guys. A must-hear for fusion fans. If you love like prog bands that do like the fusion thing as well, gotta hear it. It's amazing. You got the fun, quirky, the Calypso, which has some sizzling Miller guitar, acrobatic drum work from Pit Pile all over the place, and lots of Dave Stewart keyboards. Another really fun track on here. Square for Maud, really quirky. Love that song again. So Canterbury, so British. You got the absolutely blistering Dreams Wide Awake. It's kind of like funky free jazz, Great organ and guitar in the beginning, just doing all this wacky shit. And then it kind of morphs into like a tasty melodic fusion romp. Really cool song. You got Binoculars, which has a little bit of vocals, all right, and very Hatfield in the North sounding to me. I mean, you hear that song and I'm always like, wow, is that like a long lost Hatfield in the North track? Very cool. You got some guest players on, Jimmy Hastings is one of them on flute. You got some oboe, trombone, and trumpet. Very jazzy. An outstanding album. Quite frankly, these two go together so well. They're both so good. I had to choose one over the other. You asked me next week, I might pick this one as my number one. But, most people tend to talk about this one as their absolute classic. But you can't go wrong with any of the three. So good. But I do want to mention some other things. So there's also an album called Missing Pieces. All right. Which was released, when did this come out? Again, either sometime in the 90s or early 2000s. I don't remember exactly when. I've had this for ages. And this contains some early recordings from before the band released the first album, as well as some other pieces and things and compositions and tracks and oddities that didn't make any of the other albums. So in a sense, what you got is like the de facto fourth National Health album. Pretty much. There's some good stuff on here. Some of it, it's like, all right, I can see why that didn't make the cut, right? But it's cool to have all this stuff. Ideally, this would have been fantastic if they would have included it on here. But as they say in the liner notes to this, if they would have done that on here, you'd obviously need another CD. So you've got a 3 CD set, and we're bursting at the seams at that point, right? So, but yeah, definitely the de facto fourth National Health album, Missing Pieces, probably would rank number 4 for me. There's some good stuff on here, though. Clocks and Clouds is terrific. The Lethargy Shuffle I like quite a bit. What else is pretty notable on here? Town Plane and the Glider, Starlights on Seaweed. It's good stuff on here, right? It's just some of it this doesn't sound finished, but it's still everything this band touched is pretty worth hearing, is worthwhile and worth hearing. In addition to that, again, I don't know if this is still in print. It was originally released on Cuneiform Records back in the very early 2000s. This is Playtime, basically live stuff, right? God, I don't even remember when this was recorded. So this is pretty early, I believe. 1979, I think, right? Part of it's 1979. Yeah, so it's pretty early. You got Alan on keyboards, John Greaves on bass, Phil on guitar, Pip Pyle on drums, and then Alain Eckert guest on guitar and a couple things. But yeah, this is recordings from a couple performances. Definitely worth checking out. Like I said, if you can get it, do it. These guys were a ferocious live band, as evident by the recordings on here. There's Mr. Alan Gowan there, or Gowan. There they are. Just a classic band from the Canterbury scene. For me, there's a lot of good ones. We did if you haven't seen it, we did a whole show on In the Prog Seat about some of our favorite Canterbury bands. And, there were quite a few good ones. The historic ones, obviously, are Caravan, Soft Machine, Hatfield in the North, right? You've got National Health, you got Gilgamesh, you got Matching Mole, you got Egg. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. I have always, if they're not my favorite, they're like my number 2. National Health are amazing. For me, I think my 3 favorites are probably National Health, Soft Machine, and Caravan. But, catch me on the right day. I generally will say National Health because I'm just such a big 70s fusion nut. And I think that the majority of their music fits right into that category. Although very, very British, and got that quirky thing going. And, at times they have that kind of like breezy, laid-back attitude that a lot of the Canterbury bands have. But there's plenty of fire on these records. So, again, number 1 of Q's and Cures, number 2 National Health, number 3 DSL Coda, and we'll throw Missing Pieces in at number 4, which is all the unreleased stuff. So there you have it, everybody. Ranking the albums of National Health. Rank them as you like them in the comments below. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Coming up, you got a wealth of content today. So coming up later on, lots of stuff happening tonight. So we've got Steve Lukather coming on the channel for an interview with me. We've got Lynn Versace, top 10 songs of ABBA, ranking the albums of the Steve Morse Band. And of course, the Monsters Den, ranking our top 10 Alfred Hitchcock thrillers. All that coming up today. Lots more stuff in the days to come, so make sure you don't miss any of it. Please subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. If you want to make a donation, there's a link to the Ko-Fi page. And if you want to check out some cool Sea of Tranquility merchandise, the link to our merch page is below. You can get some cool SOT shirts, coffee mugs, hats, stickers, all sorts of fun stuff. We've got comic book geezer stuff there, Monsters Den, Hudson Valley Squares, all sorts of stuff. So check it all out, and we'll see you real soon. I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.